Monica Parker, an American mother, had just lost her entire wealth when she had to face another blow: her son's decision to marry a simple young woman who would not help fill the family's bank account. When the strong lady met the bride's parents, she called them bumpkins, demeaning them, not realizing her regret would be bitter. Monica shook her head, suspicious of the flower arrangements. She was irritated and would not hide her displeasure from anyone. Mrs. King, the buffet manager, noticed the woman's behavior and inquired as to what she was unhappy about. Monica exhaled deeply and declared, "This is simply unacceptable." It was, after all, her son's wedding, not a kermesse. The white roses and daisies were completely out of character for a ceremony, up to her family's standards. When Monica spoke, she raised her voice to make her complaints heard by more people in the hall and to emphasize how superior she felt. Mrs. King listened intently and did not interrupt the woman. She lowered her gaze to show that she valued what the customer had to say about her employee's work. The buffet manager realized it was nearly impossible to please this difficult customer with an obnoxious superiority complex. Meanwhile, Monica Parker continued her lengthy speech, claiming that anyone who mixed white roses and daisies in a wedding arrangement lacked artistic taste and aesthetic understanding. When the woman finally began to calm down and lower her tone, Mrs. King was quick to assure her that she need not worry because the error would be corrected. The manager, on the other hand, was well aware of who had chosen the arrangement of white roses and daisies. The bride had personally ordered the arrangement for her own wedding. She apologized and arranged for the daisies and white roses to be removed from the premises because she didn't want things to get any worse with her difficult customer. Meanwhile, Monica left the buffet without thanking or saying goodbye to anyone. However, this did not alleviate Mrs. King's distress. On one hand, it was a relief to be able to think things through without the presence of that snooty madam. The way she spoke was arrogant, and it appeared that the buffet and the decorations should please her more than the bride. But the manager was also upset because she would have to change the flowers at the last minute, despite the bride's request. After all, it was this madam who was paying for everything, despite the bride's request. If she had known the consequences of this change on the wedding day, she would have ignored Monica's requests. When Monica returned home, she spent some time venting to her husband, Liam. She talked about the flower arrangements, the buffet's bad location, and how she had to teach the staff about refinement and good taste. But she went even further, criticizing Claire, her son's bride and future wife. It was the final straw for Monica when her son chose this girl from a small town in the middle of New Jersey. Even now, on the eve of the wedding, she couldn't put her finger on what her son saw in this woman. Liam Parker sat silently and listened to everything. He let Monica talk and vent as she pleased, even though he disagreed with her. Unfortunately, his wife's difficult and often unpleasant personality was nothing new to him. But Liam was also not interested in proving his wife was wrong or in starting a fight. He only desired peace, so he did everything he could to calm her down. Liam had previously been a very successful businessman. However, as a result of a series of poor decisions and misconduct by a hired consultant, he made decisions that were not in the best interests of his company. And 2 years ago, his financial situation drastically changed, forcing him and his wife to move from a comfortable and carefree lifestyle to the middle class. The family yacht was no longer in existence. It was sold to clear business debts. However, Liam was well aware that blaming others for his failures would be a mistake. This is why the Parkers, particularly Monica, had high hopes for their son's marriage. They wanted their son to marry a girl from a wealthy family in order to strengthen the business and help the family's financial situation. But everything came crashing down when Enzo brought home a woman who appeared to be from a low-income family. Claire Walensky grew up in a small rural town and moved to Connecticut to study, but she decided to stay in town after graduation to pursue her dream of making a living through music. Enzo met her through mutual friends. Claire's simple demeanor drew his attention when they all went out together. She was not the type of woman who cared about designer clothes, jewelry, or a life of luxury. Enzo wasted no time in inviting her out for a cup of coffee. But Claire politely declined. Not that she didn't find Enzo interesting, but she was completely focused on her dream and spent her afternoons practicing with her guitar. The two met by chance one day in the city's famous amusement park, and the young woman decided to accept Enzo's invitation for a stroll. What was supposed to be a brief conversation turned into hours of laughter and conversation, and the two began to see each other on a regular basis after that. The more Enzo saw Claire, the more he realized she was a down-to-earth, fun-loving woman with a charming country accent. It wasn't long before they were head over heels in love, and Enzo was certain that this was the woman he wanted to raise a family with. But marriage to a simple woman was not what his parents had in mind for him. And when Monica and Liam met their son's girlfriend, all hopes of a $1 million marriage vanished as soon as she introduced herself and said where she was from. Monica and Liam had no idea where Claire was born, and this already hinted at a humble origin. Monica Parker nearly died when she revealed that her parents were farm workers. And if that wasn't enough, Monica thought Claire had terrible fashion sense. All the more reason she would not be an appropriate companion for her son. Despite her temperament, Monica loved children and hoped for the day when her only child would allow her to become a grandmother. In Monica's mind, if it weren't for Claire, Enzo would already be married to Mr. Meyer's daughter, and the two of them would be expecting their first child, which would satisfy two of her desires at once, given the Myers family's net worth in the 7 digits. Enzo had met with Peggy, Mr. Meyer's daughter, but the young man quickly realized that Peggy was extremely attached to her material possessions and only had shallow conversations. When they went out for the last time, Peggy made a point of humiliating a waitress who had misplaced her order in order to demonstrate who was in a position of superiority. That was the last straw for Enzo. At the very least, Liam could see that what existed between Enzo and Claire was genuine love, free of outside influences. Liam did not dare to interfere in their relationship, even though he admitted to himself that he was a greedy man. Monica, on the other hand, was not so lucky. She was shaken by the family's dwindling purchasing power and was willing to go to any length to get rid of Claire. Claire, on the other hand, was no fool and sensed some hostility from her future mother-in-law. Throughout their courtship, the girl did her best to tolerate all the negativity, but she knew that no matter how hard she tried to maintain a good relationship with Monica, everything had limits, and her limit had been put to the test for quite some time. Monica offered to pay for the wedding reception when Enzo and Claire's wedding was scheduled. She didn't want to hear or contribute to what Claire and her parents had to say or contribute because she didn't want the opinion of rednecks in such a large social event. Claire didn't want a big party, but she also didn't want to argue with her future mother-in-law. After all, Monica knew the town best and how to organize such an event. Claire's only request was for flowers for the decorations, which would be a simple tribute to her deceased grandmother. Monica initially agreed and volunteered to send out the ceremony invitations. Claire hoped that their relationship would improve now that they had reached an agreement. Sadly, this was not what Monica was thinking. Enzo and Claire were looking forward to their wedding day and were more than happy to keep their toothbrushes together forever. Time flew by while the ceremony was being planned. Claire's wedding day went exactly as she had planned. She spent the day at a spa, getting her hair and makeup done to enhance the beauty of her eyes, and walking perfectly into the dress she had chosen. She couldn't wait to hold her bouquet, which, along with the dress, would perfectly complement the white roses and daisies she had requested. The visitors began to arrive. As expected, Enzo's relatives and friends from the couple's time in town were present. Among the bride's relatives, however, only her parents, Michael and Nadia Walensky, were present. When Claire called Monica and inquired about her other relatives and friends from her hometown, her mother-in-law advised that they should be on their way, but that the ceremony could not be postponed for even a minute, as this would result in an unexpected extra expense. Nothing could be done if her relatives and friends did not arrive on time. But the event is so well attended and civilized that way, isn't it? He finally added. The young woman chose to ignore that hint and take comfort in the fact that Enzo, her fiancé, was sincere and did not share his parents' beliefs. She adored him, and she intended to marry him rather than her family. Monica's plan to ignore Claire's uncles and cousins had worked. She had changed the time of the ceremony in her invitations, moving it up by 1 hour. Monica went to meet the bride's parents as soon as she noticed them entering the hall, where the celebration was to take place. "Where do you think you're going? To your daughter's wedding or to a bazaar?" Monica measured Michael and Nadia from top to bottom. "Couldn't you have rented a better suit, huh?" she asked the bride's father. Monica was dressed to the nines in a designer gown and custom-made hair that cost a fortune. Nadia and Michael exchanged blank looks and apologized if their outfits seemed inappropriate, but the bride's mother assured them that they were custom-made by an Italian friend of the family. Monica retorted that they had come from an Italian thrift store at most. Finally, Michael took his wife's hand and walked toward the ballroom, leaving Monica alone with her thoughts. The Walenskys were not expecting a warm welcome, as their daughter had already warned them about the nature of their mother-in-law. They didn't expect to be met with hostility as soon as they arrived. Monica, on the other hand, liked to be the victor. Humiliating people made her feel superior, and rightly so. And in an iconic twist of fate, Claire was on the verge of making a discovery as unpleasant as Monica's personality. Claire had chosen her gown to complement the flower decorations in the ballroom and on the stage. As a result, she had personally requested that the arrangements be white roses with daisies. However, when she saw red roses in the ballroom, all of her plans for that moment fell apart at once, and she couldn't hold back a bitter cry. The bride's entire entrance was interrupted at that point. Mrs. King, the buffet manager, rushed in to say that she had done everything she could to keep things running smoothly, but that the groom's mother, who was paying for the party, had demanded that the flowers be changed. To make matters worse, as she looked around, she noticed Enzo's relatives and friends, but only her parents were present at the wedding. The rest of her relatives, whom she had hoped would attend her wedding, had not arrived in time for the ceremony, and she suspected that this was yet another dirty and prejudiced game played by her mother-in-law. Claire realized that this marriage was not and had never been hers. Claire ran out into the street, leaving the buffet behind, unable to hold back her tears and sobs. Her parents were equally disgusted by what had happened and quickly left the place as well. They already had their phone out and were using the app to request a car. Monica had not expected her son to be abandoned at the altar. Is her fiancé on the run? What would she say to all her friends and family? She quickly went to her son and asked what he was going to do. Monica didn't care about the humiliation of canceling the wedding because it would almost certainly mean the end of their relationship. But Enzo replied that the one who would be abandoned that afternoon would be his mother. "You can celebrate however you want because this is your party. My celebration will continue far away from you," he said, finally showing some guts. He went to the middle of the hall and told everyone to leave the room and go to the woods next door. The guests were perplexed, but gradually began to leave, following the groom. Monica's sense of triumph faded quickly. The party she had planned and paid for was falling apart. She dashed to Liam's side, seeking his support. She wondered if her husband was going to let all of his relatives and friends leave without intervening. But Liam had had enough. "Monica, you've broke every rule. And if you ask me, Enzo is right. You can have your buffet, but I'm off to find my son," Liam stated as he straightened his tie and walked out the door. After a while, Enzo was able to find Claire and his parents outside. He apologized to his in-laws for his mother, explaining that she is not a bad person, but is confused and trying to protect her own reputation. Claire's parents admitted that they, too, were used to being judged by their appearance, but that they had planned a surprise for the new couple, which they would both find out the next morning. Enzo stated that they didn't have to be concerned about anything, and that the greatest gift he had received was their daughter's love. He then kissed Claire and asked if she still wanted to marry him. Claire wiped a tear away and said yes. Enzo led her to a makeshift altar, and the wedding was celebrated right there. Claire's friends and relatives arrived soon after, and the rest of the evening went swimmingly, but the surprises for those two newlyweds were far from over. Claire's father handed a white envelope to his son-in-law the next morning. When Enzo opened it, he was paralyzed by what was inside. He hadn't expected anything like that. Before Enzo could say anything, Michael Walensky said that he had hoped he liked the sun, sand, and heat because it was a vacation package to Miami, complete with accommodations in one of the best hotels in town. In addition, the Walenskys had reserved a yacht for them. Enzo and Claire had no idea how to express their gratitude. They had never received a gift like this before in their lives. Meanwhile, Monica and Liam Parker were talking about what had happened that night at home. It was simply unacceptable to her that the bride had embarrassed them all by walking out on their own wedding. Enzo, to her surprise, did not pay them a visit that morning. Indeed, a week passed with no sign of the newlyweds. Monica only realized what was going on when she looked at her son's social media. She saw Enzo and Claire on their honeymoon, photos and videos of them at the beach, in the ocean, in the hotel pool, on Paradise Islands, and on a yacht. Of course, Monica had no idea and was obsessed with figuring out how they could afford such a trip. They thought about it and couldn't come up with an explanation until Liam decided to take an interest in Claire's family. Liam was more surprised than his son when he opened the white envelope after searching for the Walenskys on the internet. Michael Walensky was a landowner with thousands of acres of pasture and arable land. His business was so diverse, that he had large sums of money spread across multiple banks around the world. Monica, who was too used to the urban life of Connecticut, couldn't understand why a millionaire would choose to spend his life in a rural area like that and dress without the refinement befitting his wealth. Monica flushed as she realized her blunder. Monica summoned the courage to call Nadia and Michael Walensky, hoping to restart her relationship with them from the beginning. However, no one answered the phone, and she was forced to leave a message for the first time in nearly 10 years. Nobody returned her call. The situation only seemed to improve when they learned Claire and Enzo had returned to Connecticut. Liam and Monica arranged a reconciliation meeting at the best restaurant in town. The two were the first to arrive and waited for their son, Claire, and her parents. However, only one waiter approached. "Miss Monica?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. The waiter then placed a bouquet of white roses and daisies on the table. Monica swallowed dryly and felt a shiver run down her spine. The waiter left a white envelope next to the bouquet. Holding her breath, she opened the envelope and took out an ultrasound with a photo of a fetus. "Dear mother-in-law, the day you truly repent and become a better person, you will deserve to know and follow the growth of your future grandchild," the message said on the back. "Please contact us only after you have visited a small redneck town and personally apologize to all of my family members and friends who were almost prevented from attending our wedding. You have the official invitations, so you know where to find them. Until then, you will not be considered a good role model for our son. Goodbye, Claire and Enzo." Monica tucked the envelope away, ordered only water from the waiter, and gazed out the window in silence. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and this other video appearing on the screen now will most likely move you as well. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.